feel like you guys might be a rowdy bunch tonight, and I'm grateful for that. How many of you guys, I want to know, how many of you guys, it's your very first she gathering with us? Wow, that is awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us. This is actually one of my favorite things that we do as a church, and we only do it a couple times a year. So we love getting together, having a great time, and being able to connect in relationship, because that's really what it's about for us at Coastal, is about community and building relationships. And I feel like as women, we need that so much. We need to be each other's greatest advocates, ones that cheer each other on and say, good job. I love it that we have a vibrant family from another church here that are coming to hang out with us, that we can be on the same team together no matter where we're at in life. And so I'm so excited that you guys are here. And I believe that God's given me a pretty, well, I don't want to say amazing because of, amazing message for you guys here this evening. And I just want to ask you guys a quick question. Have you ever looked back on your childhood or look back on like photos from when you were younger and you go, what were my parents thinking? So I had actually one of those moments the other day. My mom gave me my baby book. Back in the old days when we didn't have digital things, we used to like write in a baby book and like put pictures on there and things like that. So my mom gave me mine when I was a baby, and my mom did a really good job documenting everything. I was very impressed by what she gave me, but I sat down and I was looking through it the other day, and as I was flipping through it, I was reading and I was looking at pictures, and I came across my 3rd birthday. And I looked at this picture, and I'm going to embarrass the heck out of myself. You guys, my mom dressed me up like a stinking clown for my 3rd birthday. And I called my mom. I was like, Mom, what were you thinking? And she goes, oh, you loved it. And I said, what child likes clowns? No one likes clowns. And you know what? I think that it's had a profound effect on my life. Up until this point, even when I got into high school, I didn't wear makeup. I think it's because of this. Like my friends would go, Shayla, how come you don't wear makeup? And I'm like, I really don't know. But I think subconsciously, I'm like, could you not afford entertainment? I mean, I don't know what happened. But I think a lot of times when we look back on our life, there are things that are funny that have happened to us, and we can laugh about it, but then there's things that we've carried with us. There's things that have kind of settled in and become a part of our story that maybe we don't really like. We didn't want it to be part of our story. And they're things that we continue to carry with us today. And I think about 6 months ago, I was thinking about this particular she gathering. I hope okay, good, the clown picture's not up there. I saw somebody taking a picture. I'm like, this is blackmail. But about 6 months ago, I started praying and just asking God, like, God, what do you want to say to these women? And immediately, this word unwritten came into my mind. Because here's what I know about all of our lives, and what we know about the beginning of the year is like a fresh start, a new beginning. It's somewhere where we can kind of begin again with a fresh picture of what we want this year to look like. And I felt like God said there's going to be a bunch of women sitting in this room that need to understand that their past story doesn't define them, but their future is still unwritten, and that they get to choose what they write. And so I think that there's maybe some of you that are sitting in this room that you've carried some pain, some hurt. Maybe you've even carried the good old days with you, and you've been trying to relive those for a really long time. Hello, Uncle Rico from whatever, Napoleon Dynamite or something. Trying to relive his college days or high school days. But we all have these things that we've carried with us. But here's what I know, that tonight, right now, in this moment, the last second, the last minute, that's history. And as we step out of this place today, we choose the story that we write. We choose what we live, we choose what we believe, we choose what we speak, we choose the actions that we take. And I think there can be something so beautiful that comes out of this room tonight when we have this realization that, listen, I get to choose what I write when I walk out of here. I get to choose what I write tomorrow when I wake up with my kids. I get to choose tomorrow, am I going to stay in this relationship or am I going to leave? I get to choose, am I going to continue to believe those lies about myself or am I going to move forward? Like tonight, the rest of this night is unwritten. What is the story that we're going to choose to write? You know, and as I was thinking about this and as I was praying about this, a story in the Bible came to mind. And I'm not somebody that's like, oh, it's a women's event, let's talk about a woman. Like, that stuff doesn't matter to me. But there's a really amazing story about a woman named Ruth. And I'm not going to tell the story how you probably hear it all of the time. We hear Ruth married Boaz, and it's just an amazing story. She found an awesome relationship, and it was great. But they're like, yeah, Shayla, I want that. But there's a part of her story before that, I think, that is so powerful. And so there is actually somebody named Naomi, and Naomi was married to a man named Elimelech, and he was, Elimelech, he was a wealthy man. They had a lot of land, they had a lot of resources, and they were actually Jews. They lived in Israel, and there was a time where a severe famine came into the land, and so they chose to move their family to a different place, and they went to this land called Moab. Now, Moab is a very different culture than the Jewish culture. It's a polytheistic culture where they believe in all kinds of gods and all of these different things, so it's very countercultural to how they've grown up and what they were raised in. And so Naomi and her husband move her and her two boys to Moab. And when they get to Moab, the two boys meet two girls. And in the Jewish culture, you're not to intermarry. Like, you're not to marry from another religion, from another culture, from another race. It was a no-no of that time. But these men chose to marry Moabite women. And the Moabite women that they married was Ruth and her sister Orpah. And so they are blending this family together. They have, new in-laws, and it's going pretty well. But what happens one day is all three of the men die. Elimelech dies, and the two sons die, so all three of these ladies are widows all of a sudden. And they find themselves in a place where now they have to figure out how to survive on their own. They have to figure out how to provide for themselves. There's so many challenges that they're facing. And Naomi decides that she's going to go back to where she was from. She's going to go back to Israel. And so she tells the two girls, listen, I'm going to release you from your commitments, because at that point they would have had to wait for her to have more kids and then marry those kids. And that's just a really long process, and nobody wants to do that. And so Naomi tells them, listen, you don't have to come with me. You don't have to stick around. Listen, go be with your family. Go be with what you know and what you're comfortable with. And she goes, I'm going to go on my journey, but you guys stay here. And this is actually where we pick up the story. And I think what happens in this moment where they decide, am I going to stay or am I going to go, is the moment that we're sitting in right now. I think it's a moment that we're sitting in. Am I gonna stay in what I've always stayed in? Am I gonna stay in this place of this story that's being continued to write in my life? Or am I gonna close the door on that chapter and I'm gonna write a different part of my story? And so how do we do this? And I think we find this out in Ruth chapter 1, verse 14. And this is right after Naomi tells them to leave, and it says, at this they wept aloud again. And then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. Basically, she was saying, okay, you go, I'm staying. It says, but Ruth clung to her. So basically, Ruth in that moment holds on tight and says, listen, I'm with you. And I think our first step to writing the story that we are designed to write is number one, is that we have to make a decision inside. Like we have to decide inside that, listen, I can live differently. That my story doesn't have to be the same story that's been written for so long, that I can choose to live a little bit differently. And listen, we all want the promise of something better. We all want the better marriage. We all want the better financial situation. We all want, the better job or the better relationships. And we want to see what we dream about become a reality. But I think one of the things that we have to realize is that our daily decisions determine your end destination. Your daily decisions determine your end destination. And I just want that to sink in for just a minute. Because if you think about it up till now, all of the decisions that you've made have led you to the place that you're in. The choices of relationships, the choices of jobs, the choices of how you spend your money, the choices to enter into that relationship where the person really didn't have the same values that you had, and now it might be falling apart. Our decisions determine our destination. And if we want to begin to write a different story, if we want to begin to write something amazing that God has for our life, we have to have this realization that our decisions are going to determine what happens next. So Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and went back to what she'd always known, but Ruth clung to her, and she chose something that was going to be very different and was going to be uncomfortable. And can I just tell you guys, our decisions, it's not always easy to make a decision to step out of what we've always known and to choose something different. To step out of what's been comfortable, to step out of what's been known, and to choose something different. So I have a pet peeve. And it started with my husband. Now, he's not my pet peeve, but this is where I got the pet peeve from. I remember one day I was talking to him, and I was like, TJ, I don't even remember what he was doing, but he was doing something that was annoying to me. And I said, why do you keep doing that? Like, why do you keep doing that over and over again? He goes, Shayla, that's just how I am. Oh, heck no. I said, no, that is not who you are. That is who you choose to be. And that's what I would tell a lot of you guys sitting in this room today. Well, that's just who I am. No, that's just the reality of my situation. No, that's how you choose to look at it. That's who you choose to be. Like, we can choose something different. Our daily decisions are determining the story that we're writing. How are those decisions affecting the chapter that you've been living in? When I was actually 19 years old, I made a life-altering decision that changed the course of my life. I was actually sitting in a church service, paying no attention, and I had been in a relationship with a guy for about 4 years. And it was a relationship that was extremely unhealthy, to the point where, I was an athlete. Like, I worked out, I did all of this stuff, to the point this guy would look at me and he would be standing there next to me, and he'd look at some other girl and go, why don't you look like that? But you know what? Every day, I'll tell you in just a minute. But you know what? I chose to stay. I chose to stay longer and longer and longer, in spite of something that I knew was unhealthy for me. Listen, I'm not telling you if you're in a marriage to get out of your marriage. This was a dating relationship. to the point where he would go out and sleep with other girls, and I would just take him back. He would demean me in what he would say to me. It was emotionally just pretty abusive place. And I got to the point where I was so insecure that I couldn't see that I deserved anything different. And I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And then one day, when I was sitting in a room like this, not paying attention, God knew that my story needed to be different, just like he knows your story needs to be different. And I remember that day just sitting in the back of service, and I just started to cry and to break down, and I just said, this can't be my story anymore. This can't be how I live the rest of my life. No. I choose to close this chapter. And I stood up from my seat, and I went home because we lived across the street from the church. So I walked home, and I called the guy on the phone, and I said, hey, I just want to let you know it's over. He's like, what? I was like, nothing happened. I'm just done. Like, I'm choosing to write a different story. And then the next phone call I made was to my best friends, because we all need some accountability when we make hard decisions. And I said, listen, I just made one of the hardest decisions of my life to change the course of my life. And I need you guys to be here when I feel like I need to call him, and I feel like I need to go back. I need to be able to call you. And I need you to tell me, Shayla, this is not the story you're writing. You have a different story to write. So I could pick up the phone, and I was calling them, and I mean, here's what I'll tell you. When you begin to make a different decision, when you decide inside that, no, this is no longer the story I'm writing, I will write a new story. Listen, there will be opposition. There will be difficulty. There will be challenges. There will be people that are like, oh, but don't you love him? There will be people that say, well, why would you do that? Why would you change your life that much? Why would you throw away all of that time? Again, dating relationship. And can I just say, if you're not happy with what your life is producing, start to look at the decisions that you're making every single day. Listen, Orpah, in this story, she chose what was comfortable. And Ruth chose what was courageous. Because writing your story takes courage. It takes the ability to be courageous. And you know, when I was studying this message, you know, have you guys ever heard of the story of David and Goliath? Do you know that these two women's decisions have a lot to do with that story? So Orpah chose to stay in the comfort of what she had always known and the culture she had always known, and she was the mother of Goliath. Ruth chose to leave, and she was the great-grandmother of King David. One choice produced a defeated giant, and the other choice produced a victorious king. Your choices and your decisions matter. They will change the course of your life. And again, there's going to be opposition. There's going to be challenges. You're going to want to go back to the comfortable. You're going to want to go back to the easy. You know what? Maybe some of you guys in this room, your marriage is so broken. And your natural tendency is going to be to do what's easy, and that's just to run. But maybe God is saying, have courage to write a new story in your marriage. Have courage to write a new story in your financial situation. Have courage to release that dating relationship that has been so toxic because you guys aren't on the same page. Have courage to step out and to start that business that's been so intimidating for so long. It takes courage to write your story. And there's going to be opposition. Listen to what happens next. In Ruth 1:15, it says, and she said, look, your sister-in-law, basically Naomi's going, Ruth, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. That's exactly what will happen when you walk out of here. The enemy's going to come with temptation all of a sudden. You can't do that. You just need to go back to your old ways. Go back to your old life. Go back to what was comfortable before. And in this moment, you guys, I know with all clarity that God sent you here tonight to tell you that you have the courage to write a new story, that you have the courage to change the course of your life. Which leads, am I only on point 2? Oh my gosh. Okay, so once you've made the decision, then you have to, number 2, begin to change the narrative. Here's what I know. We repeat what we don't repair. We repeat what we don't repair. If we don't repair our thinking, if we don't repair the issues that we have in our heart, we will continue to repeat the same chapter over and over and over again. And tonight, we need to begin to change the narrative, and I'm here to tell you, you are worthy, you are able, you are capable, that God designed you with a purpose and a plan to be able to overcome whatever it is that you are walking through in this moment. You have the strength, you have the courage, you have the ability, you have the capacity, you have the education, you have the knowledge, you have the ability to do it. You know, when I walked through that situation where I got up and I walked out of that service and I broke up with that guy that I had been with for 4 years, I walked back over to church, and on my way back over to church, there was this guy, TJ. Now, I don't move on that fast. But this was a guy that I'd known since I was 11 years old. But we hadn't seen each other, and we'd lost touch with one another, and I remember walking back over in a very broken state, because I had just made a really difficult decision to change the course of my life. And I remember TJ's like, hey, Shayla, you know, a bunch of people are coming over to hang out. You want to hang out? And TJ and I slowly just built this amazing friendship back. And I remember one time driving in the car on the way to somewhere, and I was still, even though I had made the decision to change the course of my life and to go, no, I'm going to write a different story, I still every single day had to tell myself something different, because I had been ingrained for so long that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't pretty enough, that I wasn't smart enough, and I had to begin to change the narrative in my head. And I needed people around me to help me do that. And so I was riding in the car with TJ one day, and if you guys know TJ, you know he's like this. But I must have been saying something so insecurely, or like, no, I can't do that. No, I'm not capable of doing that. No, I would never do that. And he looked at me and he goes, Shayla, you are a daughter of the King. I was like, okay. No, Shayla, the Bible tells it you are a daughter of the King. I want you to say that. I'm not saying that. That's just weird. No, I'm Shayla, no, you need to say it. I'm a daughter of the King. Fine. I'm a daughter of the King. He's like, no, you need to say it. I'm like, I'm a daughter of the King. No. You need to say it. And finally I was like, I am a daughter of the King. And do you guys know, that is so stupid to me, but something broke that day. Something broke that day. And my mentality changed. And some of you guys in this room need to shout out, I'm a daughter of the King. Hey, thank you. Because we have to begin to change the narrative that is present in our mind. You know, Joyce Meyer said this. She said there's 2 kinds of pain. The pain of change or the pain of remaining the same. Which pain do we choose? The pain of changing and rewriting and making a new story and closing the last chapter, or the pain of reliving that chapter over and over and over again. We have to begin to change the narrative in our head. Think about this. You know, when you think about a novel or a story, conflict in that story is so important, because without the conflict in the story, it's important to the success, but without the conflict, you might as well write about your favorite character eating nachos and watching paint dry. Like, it is so boring without conflict. But conflict produces something in our life. And that thing up until this point, that challenge that you've been facing up until this point, that mistake that you've made, that failure that you've had, that sin that's been in your life, those decisions that you have continued to make, listen, that conflict will produce something in you. It is not wasted, but God will use it as part of your story, because you don't know that there is something that somebody else has walked through in their past, and they need your story of going, no, I stood up out of that room and I walked out of here different because I realized that I had a different story to tell, and you could do that too. Because that conflict has power in our life to be able to bring freedom, not only to us, but to others. We have to begin to start seeing things differently. We have to see ourselves differently. If we're going to write our story, if we're going to write God's story for our life. And I love what Ruth does next. In Ruth 1:16 through 18, she says this to Naomi after Naomi tells her to go on. She said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I'll go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death departs you and me." Listen, she is going, listen, no, I am stepping into a new story. Your God, my God. Your people, my people. When you die, I will die. That is the story I'm writing, not the story of my past, but I am stepping into my future. And she begins to declare that over her life. And I believe that some of you guys need to do that today. Is number 3, you need to redefine your future. You need to begin to look at your future differently and go, no, I am not the sum of my past. I am stepping forward and I am writing a new story. You know, I'm going to tell you about one last piece of that story of me leaving that guy and then becoming a daughter of the King. So I sat down one day because I had to change the narrative of my head, and I had to reimagine what God could use me for. Because God has a purpose and he has a plan for every single one of us. And I sat down and I was like, God, I'm so broken, but I'm your daughter. And I know you have a plan for my life. What is that plan? And I began to sit down and just listen and spend time with God. And I used that time just to get closer to God. And I spent time in his word, and I spent time praying. And God will speak to you in those moments. And I remember sitting down at 20 years old and writing a mission statement for my life in a journal that I had. And I just want you, I'm going to throw it up on the screen. I took a picture of it. It says, to minister as God leads me in every situation, including upfront ministry or one-on-one counseling. I don't really like that, but I do it. To equip women with the power of the Word of God, and to speak to both men and women about the power of godly relationships, because I've had the other ones. To be an administrator of our ministry. I wasn't even dating the man yet. To be an administrator of our ministry and to assist in any way that God leads me to be a helpmate to my husband and to assist him in ministry in any way he needs me to, and to fill the calling and purpose that God has on my life. I am living that right now. There is power in redefining your future. There is power in allowing God to write your story. You do not have to repeat the chapter over and over again. God has a new story to write in your marriage. He has a new story to write in your business. He has a new story to write in your finances. He has a new story to write in your mind, to be able to create something that is not always questioning who you are, but to walk in confidence. We have to begin to redefine the future and go, God, what do you have for me? Because here's what I know. If you don't have faith for the future, you won't have any power in the present. If you don't have faith for your future, if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what you're walking towards, you will be powerless in this moment. You will give in every single time. If I didn't have faith to believe that my story could be different in that moment, then I would have gone back to that guy again and again. We've got to have faith for our future so that we can stand in strength and in power in those moments of decision when we're faced with, do I go back to that chapter or do I continue writing my story in my new chapter? We have to redefine our future. You know, for a lot of you guys in this room today, it's time to close the last chapter. Might be time to fix your marriage. Might be time to get out of that abusive relationship. Might be time to start seeing yourself differently. But here's what I know. Every single one of us in this room have a story to write. And for us to do that, we have to begin to let go of the past. We have to let go of the things that have been spoken over us, or the things that we've believed about ourselves up until this point. And in your little worship guides there on your chair, there's a little slip of paper that's paper clipped in there. And I want you guys to take out that little slip of paper. If you don't have one, you can raise your hand. I got people that'll bring you one. But we're going to do a little something tonight, because I believe in the power of a moment, in the power of a choice, in the power of releasing our past and stepping confidently into our future. And so tonight, this is what that little piece of paper is for. I want you to write something on there, a word. I don't know, insecurity. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if it's abuse. I don't know if it's addiction. I don't know what your struggle is, or maybe what's defined you up until this point. But I want you to know that that doesn't have to define you anymore. And in just a minute, we're going to have the worship team come out, and we're going to kind of sing a song in worship. And what I want you to do, actually, can I have one of those little things? So there's these little buckets on the front of the stage, and there's a few in the back. And when you're ready, I want you to take that word that you've written that maybe has defined you up until this point. And I want you to come up here, and I want you to drop it in this water. And I want you to see it dissolve. Because tonight, that thing doesn't define you anymore. It's gone. It's in the past. And as we step out of here tonight, we can begin to write a new chapter. We can begin to write confidently our story. And then out in the lobby, there's this big pink backdrop, and you can write a new word and then take a selfie. Be like, this is who I am now. But you guys, I know how powerful one decision was in my life. And that can be you tonight. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter the addiction. It doesn't matter the abuse. It doesn't matter the glory days. What does God want to write now? And what do you need to allow to dissolve and no longer exist in your life? So I'm going to pray over you, and then I'm going to have the worship team out. And as they're singing this song, I just want you guys to come forward or to drop them in the back. And then just go back to your seat and just worship and just pray and just allow God to do something in your heart. Father, we just come before you tonight. And God, I lift up every woman in this place. God, I thank you, Lord, that you have a beautiful story to write for each one of them. God, you have a beautiful picture of what you want their life to look like, God, and we are not the sum of our past. What has happened in our past is in the past, God, and we walk out of here new and different and changed. So, Lord, I pray, God, that you would just give them eyes to see. Lord, that you would begin to wash away the pain of the past, that you would begin to wash away the decisions of the past, and that tonight we would walk in hope, we would walk in freedom, that we would walk in victory, God. We would walk out of here delivered from the things that have kept us in bondage for way too long. So, God, we just surrender this time to you. God, I pray that you would show us what it is that we need to release, and that we would let it go and be changed. It's in Jesus' name that I pray.